Anyway, hate to be a little drum, but I just, I've been watching a couple of news articles this weekend and last night, and the country's really getting crazier and crazier. So, and I'm saying the same thing in hopes to get people's attention, because we need to have a united middle class. A united and healthy middle class creates a strong America. And you have to listen to who wants that to happen and has ways of making it happen. And then we need to vote people in and vote people out according to their strengths or weaknesses. And it's going to take some time to do, to get finally a handle over our political system, because we have no handle over this. And the founding fathers gave us this. We owe it to them. They weren't perfect people, but and they were elites, but they at least saw that this country, the middle class of this country, needs to run the important issues directed by our politicians. And just like you have a head of a company and you have the crew of a company, if that's not going right in a company, one or the other, that company goes out, right? Well, this country is much, obviously a whole different scenario, but it matches a bit, because we're on the way to communism right now, or socialism, and there's just no getting around that fact that either we come together and we pull together and we look out for our neighbors and we talk to each other and we do those things that our founding fathers gave us the freedom to do, or we don't have a society anymore. Anyway, we're going to start getting this down. I'm still working on some lighting. Barbie's moving to California, so she's going to be producer Barbie remote. But I think we might be able to get her on camera this way. So with all of that said, you guys have a great weekend. Say hi to each other. Go out and say hi to somebody. Just wave at them, man. Start that way. Just wave at them. Every time you see them, wave at them. You don't know them. And then you'll see the reaction change, evolve. You'll see the body language evolve. Go out and say hi to a couple of people today. Anyway, love you guys. Thanks for being here. We are back. It's great to see you guys. I love people getting on. That pre-video I have there, I got to edit that because it was taken months and months and months ago before any change, and we don't just talk about politics, although kind of we are today. But it's a kind of a mix of politics and history, right? I've been advertising this a lot because I think it's going to be. I mean, all of the topics that we talk about are all important, and they have varying degrees of interest, obviously, depending on the subject. But this one here is, I think it's probably one of the most important topics we're certainly going to talk about in recent times. We all know how the conflicts are going on around the world, and now there's a change in administration. And I think everybody's kind of suspect, because it's weird how two sides are lining up for this, or calling Trump a Putin liker, and there's just weird stuff. It happened all last administration, and now it's not as bad as the first administration of his, but it's always fight. We as I say in the pre-go, I say we got to come together. We've got to talk about things like what we're doing here. So I have Christine on coming up. She's written 4 books. She is a historian on. I may not be saying this exactly correct, Christine. You're the expert, so correct me wherever I'm wrong. But an expert on USSR Russia relationships. She's done a lot of editorial work on this. She had her own radio show talk on this. subject, as well as been published in many articles. And you know what? I like to talk so much, but I got to get her on here. All right, here we go. Welcome, Christine. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, Rod. It's a pleasure to be with you and your audience.
Ah, yes, it is. This has been, as I was telling you before, this is something I've been really excited about because, it's on the fringes of what we talk about affecting the middle class, what's concerning and what's uh, 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 elevating to the middle class. It's kind of on that fringe, but at the end of the day, this is probably one of the things currently that could most affect their lives besides AI. That's down the road, other things. This is interesting, let's say. What do you say?
I would say absolutely, it's critical. I agree with you in terms of uniting, but what do we unite in? We must base our being united as middle class Americans, as you and I, in the truth. And the sad thing about
Yes.
it is our government and media have given us decades of lying propaganda in regards to many things. But what my expertise is as you said, Russian Soviet history and the geopolitical situation between the U.S. and collective West and Russia. And it is on that the majority of Americans, what they think they know, the truth is completely opposite, because Russia is not the enemy of the United States, the UK, or Europe. They pose no threat to them whatsoever. And all we get bombarded with are the lies of a brutal invasion, when the truth is just the opposite.
Well, and I started to see cracks in this message, in this story, in this happening that's going on. Hey, welcome everybody. Keep coming on. Subscribe and like. This is a really good topic because it's, we all need to know history. And this, as we talk about, this is a conversation where we bring on experts in the area, and this conversation then, as I put it, some of the thing will blow your mind, because I started to get a little more suspicious. I'm just an average dude, just a guy living my life in the middle class. But what I noticed is you're starting to hear dramatic differences. You listen to what talking heads say, and they come out with these points, and all of a sudden it starts changing, and things don't add up. I look at all the different news media. So that's what got me started. And then when you came on and started talking about what we're doing, I was like, oh, please, because I need to know things. We all need to know things, right?
Yeah. And the sad thing is, and what I will start out with is, first of all, for people, I know many in your audience do not trust the mainstream media and do not trust the government.
That's true.
Yep. And that is a prerequisite. But the risk in anything that is consistent with the decades of the lies that have been told to them, there is so much that Americans believe about Russia, even the Soviet Union, but just in terms of Russia, that are completely false. And then they listen to their news, they repeat the propaganda, they let their opinions be formed, and yet they are not based on the truth. And that is why when Russia began the special military operation in February 2022, I decided that, I saw it for what it was. It was a righteous action. It was something that the Russians had to do. If they didn't, it would have been wrong. It would have been evil. This is it's neither brutal. In fact, it's probably the most humane military action I've ever seen out of necessity. And number two, it's not an invasion per se, with the implications that word brings. On the contrary, it was completely defensive. There's 2 points I would make upon this, since this is what everyone is discussing about it, although there's much more to it. Number one, Russia had to begin this special military operation in defense of thousands of people in Ukraine who had been asking Russia to intervene for 8 years. These people in the area of the Donbass, which is where the 4 areas, the regions that have ascended now into Russia, had been asking for Russia's
Interesting.
help for 8 years, ever since the United States backed coup eliminated the duly elected president of Ukraine. And ever since then, the people in these regions have been persecuted, have been murdered. The atrocities are, as they say, unspeakable. Rape rooms, even now, they are continuing to do such atrocities. The Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian troops engage in the most vicious torture and atrocities you can imagine. They were doing that for 8 years against the people within Ukraine who spoke Russian, who wanted to continue to speak their language, who wanted to teach their children the truth that they used to be part of the Soviet Union. Even the books that Ukraine put out lied to the children all across the country that the Ukraine was some separate independent country, never a part of the Soviet Union. And they shelled civilians constantly, just as they are doing now. This is terrorism. These are war crimes. They would hit grocery stores, hospitals. Even now, they are chasing civilian cars with their drones. The Ukrainians have been bringing this evil against those people purely because they spoke Russian. Also, these are the same people who once a year would want to remember with gratitude in terms of World War II and the defeat of fascism. They were not allowed to even have those memorials anymore to their past and to their relatives who died. And they had been asking Russia to intervene, liberate them, save them. And that's where Minsk I and Minsk II came in, to keep those regions part of Ukraine. But as we all know now, they were completely lied to Putin's face. Merkel has even admitted it, lied to him. Why? So that they could continue to arm Ukraine. Number two, in defense of the Russian Federation. For many years, President Putin has been seeking peace.
Can I jump in real quick? Can I jump in real quick? As you go over, I was just wanting to remark that it's so bizarre, and I learn this more and more and more every day through the media and everything else. What you're describing, first of all, at the very beginning, there were discussions about bringing back their own people. Would you say it was Borst? Where is that?
Oh, the region in general, you could just refer to the Donbass.
Donbass, yeah, that's a much better. That sounds even better. But what I'm seeing now is everything coming out. It was Russia, the victim, our villain, and they've always been our villain, right? Because war, you need to get all fired up and all sorts of stuff. But as I understand this, and you're going to go into it, one, I never knew how horrible Ukraine seems to be. I'm hearing some things now as Trump's administration comes in, and yeah, exactly, exactly that. And the last thing, it's just interesting how the tables are turning on the information, and we need more like this to have these kind of conversations. And I think this question that's here, what's the biggest misconception about Russia? That's what made me think of this. The biggest misconception about Russia is Ukraine, right?
I would say that the biggest misconception, which that would come under, is that Russia is the enemy, that Russia has any intentions against Europe or the United States. And that has been really a strategic lie that the U.S. has been propagating for decades, when the truth is just the opposite. As I was saying, even
maybe
as early
generations.
Yeah, it has actually, and we won't go back this far, but the goal of the United States has been stated, and every U.S. president, or at least most of them, have been complicit in this. The goal of the United States is the strategic defeat of Russia. at all times, regardless of what they are doing, what they are saying. But it has always been that. And yes, it goes back during the Cold War, even prior to that, during the Russian Civil War. You look at the end of World War II, there were discussions then about invading Russia. There was the ally, the Soviet Union, and Churchill even talked about, it's called Project Unthinkable, dropping an atomic bomb on the Soviet Union. He said they're at their weakest. They liked them at their weakest. They were glad that 27 million Soviets died defeating the German fascists. And it has never stopped. And they cloak it once in anti-communism, but once they did not have that as a reason, and you can reject communism as an ideology to run your country, but that does not give you the right to be trying to change another country. When I say that the US presidents have all been complicit in this, it's because they all believe in American hegemony, and that is a mistake. You should focus upon your own country, as even Trump has said multiple times, make your country great, but you must also respect the sovereignty of other countries. Ukraine is simply a proxy being used by the US, and it was planned that way.
Wasn't this could have ended right when it started? Isn't this whole thing from Russia's point of view about, and by the way, I'm gonna have you read off a couple questions because they're really poignant. They're really kind of cool, actually. Better questions than I can ever say. But the question is this began as, wasn't about taking, invading another country. It was about keeping the UN, right? UN charter. Have a. What's that? Go ahead. I'm stumbling.
Okay. Well, the second reason that this is happening in Ukraine, in addition to protecting the people who asked, and Russia tried with the Minsk agreements and were lied to, so that the West just merely continued to arm them instead of protecting the civilians that were to be killed. But the second reason to which you are alluding is the fact that Russia was promised, the Soviet Union as it collapsed, even the discussions with Gorbachev, with Secretary Baker on behalf of George H.W. Bush, was to end NATO in the Warsaw Pact, let us cooperate. There was no need for a NATO once the Soviet Union collapsed. And nevertheless, they kept it, and they lied to the Soviet Union. And you can actually read the transcripts, both from the Russian archives and from the United States National Security Archives, which I have read, which shows the lies because they knew they were not going to respect that. NATO continued. They said it was just going to be political. And on the contrary, NATO is really nothing but a U.S. tool of aggression. The United States has 800 to 1,000 military bases all over the world. Russia doesn't do that. And Ukraine was the final. They turned the other Warsaw Pact nations that had previously been a part of the Soviet Union with hundreds of billions of dollars prior to this, and turned them, which they frequently do, color revolutions and influence upon the government, just like we have going on here, which is completely against the middle class best interest. But they did that in all of those countries against their middle class best interest in order to turn them against Russia. Well, Russia was not going to allow that to happen in Ukraine. And what I began to say was, in 2007, President Putin actually was at the security conference. We just had another one of those recently. We have them every year. And he asked the question poignantly. That evil John McCain was sitting right in the front row, and you could just see them all disturbed, and Merkel disturbed, all of them disturbed, because Putin posed the question, who is this aggression against? Why is NATO expanding? And of course, once we saw that the Biden administration, the coup was planned by the US, Victoria Nuland, and under Obama in 2014. Once that happened, the threat to Russia escalated to such an enormous degree. And then you got Zelensky, who ran on a peace platform and, of course, listened to his controllers and completely was arming and preparing against Russia. So Russia had to step in, because there's no way they're going to allow NATO to enter Ukraine. It's bad enough the weapons that have been given to them already.
Yeah, crazy. in part of the advertising of this, I said that Christine is going to say things that are factual that are going to blow your mind, and it's so, in my opinion, so evil. Well, here, let me step back off of that. It's amazing how I'm assuming you're a big Trump supporter because he's speaking the truth. He knows the history, and he's not trying to make a big dollar sales to the different sites. He wants us to be free, just like. But the media calls him. You hear it, right? He's a push. Uh, um, uh, a Putin supporter, and he's a backer of this. They were doing it to what's the lady's name that just took over? She was the governor, I think, of, can't remember her name anyway. But that's a lot of crazy stuff going on there because we're talking about complete, utter lies from our government to our citizens for their own benefit. And we talk about those kind of examples all the time. I want to read a couple of questions, excuse me, and then you can attack these. How does Russia view society? And this is a really good question because how we view ourselves and how we view other people, those citizens, is the best way to find out what's going on. What do their people view, right?
You mean how do Russians view us as Americans? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, look on the screen there. How does Russia's society view the U.S. government versus the American people? Are we that?
Sure, I'll be glad to address that. And then I want to go back to your reference to Trump and my thoughts on that, on him. But first, let me address this question. I think you said that how does the Russian government view the American government as contrasted with the American people? Actually President Putin has addressed that.
The Russian people, how do they, in both cases? Say that again?
I will do both.
Perfect.
I will address both. First of all, in terms of the government and how it views the people of our country, of America, versus the government, the president of Russia has repeatedly expressed respect for the American people, admiration for our creativity, our history, the struggles that we've gone through and endured. So he has never spoken against the American people. In fact, I would say, frankly, he is the greatest protector of this escalating to where no one wants it to go in terms of a military conflict. If not for Putin, with the insane government and the evil that our government has been trying to provoke a military confrontation with Russia, but it is really due to his patience. He's quite a good man, but he does distinguish that. He does not want to have to, at any time, have bloodshed. In terms of the government, I think he has learned, as he has said, he regrets that the special military operation didn't happen sooner, because perhaps less life would have been lost, because it would not have been armed like it was, and all those people would not have been died by the shelling of civilians. But of course, I think there's a very healthy distrust of the Russian government, of the US government, because it has lied to Russia repeatedly. In terms of the people, no, the Russian people, beautiful society, by the way.
Yes.
You and I, and I'm sure most of your viewers are like you and I, middle-class Americans. I'd have to tell you that not only the attitude toward us as Americans in Russia is actually welcoming, as long as there's no hostility shown to them, they welcome those, just as myself or anybody that gets to know Russians, or if you know Americans over here with family there, it is welcoming. They're really a beautiful people, and it's a faith-based nation, I would say. I think that whether one is of the Orthodox faith, which is the primary religion there, or not, it affects society. You don't see homelessness, you don't see filth. as you do over here. It is a very clean, beautiful place. In fact, Moscow is the most technologically advanced city, or one of the most in the world. I would say that most of our viewers today would absolutely love life, because the lifestyle, to be middle class over there, you have so much more. The price of food, it's non-GMO automatically. They don't allow that. The price of food, housing, apartments, everything is very, very low. It's a outstanding quality of life, healthcare, technology, science. But the people themselves are warm, open, and they actually love relating to Americans who accept them and who haven't adopted this Russophobic, this hatred of them. And to meet an American and Americans who are not, they're just very open, welcoming, very loving people.
That is not a surprise. Any of that. Why do you think? Well, I'm going to get to a couple of these questions later, but I really want to know the history. I mean, the original was about warfare back in the World War I. You know, so Russia became our enemy because it benefited the U.S. military. How do you think that? Was there something more to it that keeps that coming up? Why do we keep that story going? Why do we keep that to the point where our media will beat up on Trump? And you said it. Mm-hmm. Reagan supported this. Bush supported. You know, they had things that we work together. Now, if anybody talks about working with somebody, well, specifically Trump, but working with somebody like that, it's like, oh no, they're evil, they're evil, they're evil. Why is that staying up? What is our government's benefit? Maybe selling missiles and stuff? Is that what it's all about?
Well, of course, we're all aware of the military-industrial complex, and Project Ukraine has been a great moneymaker for, you know, the elite, not only in the United States, but in the European countries. It's a big grift in terms of the money. But now I think what you see is the EU does not want to give it up, And Trump, you mentioned him a few times. I will say this in regards to Trump. He is, during his first term, and obviously now, he is proceeding for domestic policy in things that actually appear they're going to benefit the American people and protect the American people and security. And it does seem that that is his goal, and he does that effectively. But in terms of international policy, I'm very pleased to see that he, on occasion, is speaking the truth. But Rod, I would remind you, I don't feel it's because he's truly seeking peace in the definition that the Russians and I and you consider what peace is. To me, peace is respect for sovereign nations, just as you and I respect each other in our individual differences. And peace implies, for me, that definition is that cooperation may also include healthy competition. Nothing excludes that, but not a hostility and not a goal of defeating the other. Trump has not rescinded the U.S. goal of the strategic defeat of Russia. It's just that right now it does not serve him and his administration's goals, which are also American hegemony. When you take a look at what is happening in the mass murders in Gaza, when you take a look at his stated hostilities toward China, Iran, he wants to switch his American hegemonic goals to those areas versus Project Ukraine, which is a big loss. And those of us, such as myself, who knew history and also studied both the U.S. as well as the Russian military, knew it was obvious that, of course, Russia will prevail. It's just that the United States decided to let hundreds of thousands die instead of ending it. Trump himself was, during his first term, the first U.S. president, despite all the things the previous presidents had done working in Ukraine, the bio labs, the organ harvesting, which probably most of your, and that was to the benefit of those in the United States as well as the Zionist state, the organ harvesting. There's so much evil that the U.S. has utilized and done in Ukraine. They do not want to let that go. But it would be a big loss. Trump is about winning and deals, which is perfect in private enterprise. It's even perfect for domestic policy. But for international policy, no. He's saying some of the truth, but he's always known the truth. He vacillates because he, unfortunately, as many Americans put him in there as not a politician, but he has become a politician in the worst sense of the word when it comes to international policy, not domestic. And in that, he's not giving that up. He wants to end it with Ukraine. He doesn't want a loss on Trump's administration. He wants to come out like he's a peacemaker. But I can tell you this, Rod, if he's truly cared about the loss of life, he would simply stop supplying Ukraine with weapons, intelligence, Starlink, and personnel. He would also stop all weapon sales to those countries in Europe and the EU who are going to continue to supply. And instantly, within just a few weeks, this would be over, the bloodshed would stop, and there would be a just into it. The people who asked to be liberated and saved from the merciless killing by the Ukrainians would be incorporated, ascended into Russia, and the shelling of civilians would stop. Trump can stop it immediately, but he doesn't. He's thinking more about his image than what matters most, human life.
Wow. Well said, obviously. But it seems to me that like Trump's trying to bring this to an end versus it was just a moneymaker for past administrations. So what do you think about the current situation where there's these negotiations going? I'll tell you one thing about Trump. I used to go so crazy with international politics. You were talking about international agendas. It's been so weird before Trump. Everybody, and I'm not saying good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just saying it's noticeably obvious that we don't have to be. We actually talk about things now, and maybe like you said, they're not necessarily correct, but we talk about things now where in the past there was all these I'm gonna steal that word salad. Oh, I'm missing some lighting. When you get going here, I'm going to jump on. I thought something was wrong with my lighting. But before you had the elites, the leaders all talking in gibberish and, and soft, not even promises. How do you think that all of that today is moving forward between the more open conversations? Is that starting to expose things of what you're talking about, as well as where are we at on this current negotiations? When you finish answering, I want to hear about 3 or 4 of these questions because they're really good.
Okay. I would say that it is promising. And I think that it was absolutely insane, crazy, what the Biden administration did, escalating this, not only with the warfare, but no dialogue, 2 nuclear superpowers, and having no communication with Russia. That was crazy. Also, they did not only with the sanctions, then we had the closing of the majority of the Russian consulates in the United States. Even the sanctions have completely backfired. I mean, Russia's economy has grown like 4.1% in the last year. The World Bank considers it the 4th largest economy in the world, and yet it only has half the population of the U.S. When you put that in perspective, it is just increasing significantly economically. And
wait, you're saying Russia is the 4th largest with half the population? Is that what you said?
Yeah, very significant. And that is why That is why it was a joke when Trump invited or suggested he would like to see Russia join the G7. Why would Russia join such a pitiful, pathetic organization? The G20 matters because it incorporates so many of the other economic powerful nations. But in terms of the dialogue that Trump has begun, that is good. We should have dialogue at the very least. And
from now on,
we all want to
period. From now on, period.
Hopefully it maintains. But I will say, hopefully we will have consulates open. Hopefully for the travel of those who have friends and family who live in Russia, that we will restore airlines between the two countries, both socially and economically. The United States is only well, we're going to see when we have this dialogue going on, there's possibilities of cooperation. With no dialogue like Biden, it only gets worse. Right now, I see that. But in terms of the Ukraine conflict, no, it's good that they are talking. But I have seen nothing from Trump's side that acknowledges the Russian perspective. He is speaking the truth when he says this would have never happened had he been president. And of course, well, I believe he was elected president previously, but be that as it may, had he been president, and maybe now it's as it should be. He is president now, and it will make things better. But I would say, remember, his goal is simply to end this project, Ukraine, but he's not yet acknowledging what the Russians are very clearly saying. Lavrov has stated, even as Trump is saying, oh, there's going to be peacekeepers there, or NATO peacekeepers. There are not going to be NATO peacekeepers because we know from entire history what that signifies and what they are used for. There would only be from the UN Security Council and Russia's agreement to who would be there should you do that. Also, the liberation of the people. Russia is not going to let those thousands of people be subjected to that fascist government of Ukraine. Until that government is changed and they are demilitarized, they are always a threat to civilians. Russia's not going to agree to anything that is less than why they started the special military operation. I feel it's encouraging that he says the truth sometimes. Sadly, sometimes the very next day he says just the opposite. So I think it's less, I think he knows better, but he's trying to play it so it turns out as if he's a peacekeeper. Be the peacekeeper, Trump. Just stop arming Ukraine and it would be over with and there would be justice.
Yeah, that's as you're unfolding these facts, these talks, it's so refreshing that we're talking about something beyond just a talking head, beyond a headline, just beyond a talking point, because the American people have been, our government likes to make us feel how wonderful the government is running, as far as the higher course, the higher road that we take because we're Americans. And it's great. I mean, it's great to have pride in your country, but it doesn't seem like, because what you're describing now about Ukraine and this, I mean, this is an ongoing thing. I mean, we've gone in and had people try and overtake a government, and it wasn't working out really well in the news media, and we pulled out. Not just once. I mean, it happens regularly, but we have such a short memory. Before you respond, I just want you to take a look at these and choose whether you want to respond first or go through some of those questions. Because the questions, like I said, these people are smarter than me.
I don't have that screen on YouTube. Go ahead.
Oh, you don't?
Pick out one or two. No, just
what's
ask me anything.
Oh yeah, we got 8, 9, 10, I don't know, 10 more questions here. Are there any common interests that could bring the US and Russia close together again? Because the media won't let it. I mean, the media is whatever reason. But why don't we do this? Do you think it'll ever get back there? Because we've had relationships with Russia, in the positive. I don't know how many, have we ever done any well, of course we've done business with them. So what do you think about that?
Oh yeah. Well, yes, there's was enormous amount of export, import, and in terms
Right.
of corporation space, the space exploration, the United
Yes.
States really benefits greatly, and vice versa. When we cooperate with our space exploration and the Space Center, but there's so much more that could be done, and I would like to see it not become a competition per se or a militarized agenda of the US, but let us as human beings on Earth explore how much great when you have the technology of Russia and of the United States. Also, Antarctica. There's so much exploration. I would focus upon
Yeah.
Earth. Also, I will also tell
Russia's
you this:
huge there, right? I'm
yes,
sorry, I
and the
cut you off.
medical.
Russia's huge there. Okay, go ahead. The medical what?
Yes, the medical technology, the exploration, the investigation and research in Russia is incredible. And frankly, I'd have to say, as an
Really?
American, far superior. I would much rather have my medical care, everything, in Russia than in the United States. And
Okay, I can't argue
whether
with
it's
that.
whether it's your day to day or whether it is even looking at the research for the cancer cures, Russia is so advanced. Also, in vision restoration, Russia is so advanced. And I would tell you this is
Vision, you
appalling.
mean
The
eyes?
United
Eyes,
Yes,
restoration,
yes.
vision. Okay, gotcha.
In fact, all of our technology or research that we now use was developed first in Russia, even with cataract surgery. But they are so far more advanced in glaucoma and even restoring vision than they are in the US. You look at things like this that benefit humanity, and why shouldn't the US and Russia cooperate? Years ago, the United States FDA banned anything from Russia, no matter how good it was. They had a real vaccine, a real
Wow.
one in regards to COVID, which has been it was called Sputnik, and it is far superior than these mRNA. I reject everything the US has done in regards to COVID and all of that. But in Russia, if you want it, you had a real vaccine, minimal side effects, but it actually is still maintaining protection against the variants. In the US, what they're putting in people, I don't know. I reject it for myself personally. But what I'm saying is, to get to the point, they have banned anything from Russia. They already have the vaccines against cancer, and they are beginning it during this year, administering it. They are restoring people's vision all across Russia that lost it due to glaucoma. Why not cooperate? There is blessings in coming together instead of this hostility. And you asked, is it possible that we would ever get to that point? Russia wants it. Russia has always, Putin
I sense that.
has
I sense
always,
that.
yeah, he has always wanted that. He even offered us their vaccine for those, and
Mhm.
you can reject them altogether, but at least it was a real, not this mRNA. It's a redefining vaccine. It's not even a vaccine in the United
Wow.
States, with in my opinion, a lot of harmful side effects. But nevertheless, what I'm saying is, Russia has always sought peace and cooperation and sharing of this technology with us, and the US has refused.
Wow. Yeah, it's such a bizarre situation that we don't know more like that. Like, you mentioned foods. I'm sure Kennedy's going to be an interesting subject over the administration, which I think is great because we've had
Mhm.
what is it when you're on the scale? Uh, you're we've had a lot more disease than the rest of the world. We've had a lot
Yes,
more. Most of Europe doesn't allow the food to be processed the
that's
same
right.
way our own people sell it to us, and that's
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 right.
that's bizarre. And you know what? They're fighting Kennedy on that. So, what is the end goal for the
Mhm.
U.S.? What is it?
Well, I would say that American hegemony benefits those who have the power They are protected against anything. They can just proceed to earn their millions, hundreds of millions of dollars themselves, and it's a vicious
They don't
circle.
earn it, they steal it.
No, they don't earn it. Well, yes. Look, government never earns anything. It does nothing but steal our money. and
It's
use it
excessive too.
exactly, they bring misery and death to people worldwide in order to buttress their control and their money. But we don't benefit. To go back to how we began this, for the middle class, we should unite in truth and make it known that we reject American hegemony. We want America to be strong and to provide for its citizens, but how much more it would do that cooperating. Just like economically, there is the organization called BRICS, very powerful, free trade cooperation, like you were alluding to, between nations in all these areas. That is the future, not the United States being the unipolar, the controller of the world. It needs to drop that. Think about these matters, because as your intro said, in terms of who you put in there, fundamentally, they're not changing unless we change and we make it known to them. Geopolitical policy, international policy is important to us. Cooperate. There is nothing about defense of America by having 1,000 military bases and provoking and taking over countries and murdering people. There's nothing. It's just for the elite to have their control and make their money at our expense and at others' expense. And nothing should be measured by the dollar alone. I believe, and I'm a Christian, I believe that if you do things out of a sense of love, which can include self-defense, it's nothing incompatible, just like the Russians are defending themselves at this time. There's nothing wrong with self-defense. But when you use all of your military for offensive purposes for decades, your people in your country suffer. Look at the people in North Carolina. They're still suffering. And probably Trump will address those domestic issues. He does seem to care about the well-being of Americans. But fundamentally, the well-being of Americans is also there when you cease aggressive actions worldwide. And that would also, I will have to say, include cease supporting the Zionist state and its mass murders. We are not going to be blessed. And as I said, I'm a Christian, so I will simply say this: we're not going to be blessed as long as we, even though we directly say we don't agree with it, but if we allow this government in our name, with our tax money, to murder others for some economic benefit, we also will suffer the consequences. The worst would be an escalation, eventually, hopefully not, to a World War III or any degree thereof. And it would be best to get along with other countries rather than continue with that hostile, aggressive NATO stance. There's no reason that there is even a NATO. United States shouldn't be a part of it.
Yeah, and that is unbelievably logical. One question, the movement of opinions go back and forth, right? Depending on whoever's got the media and their whoever spent the most money on advertising their point. We have so many things to point to. The ability for our country to move forward is everything you're talking about right now. And on top of that, I take from what Reagan said in trust but verify. I'm trusting Trump in this, but you don't know. I like you said, we never know. And by the way, he's been in politics really since he was like in his 30s or something, right? You see the clips all through time. Go ahead.
I have read all of Trump's books years ago. I've admired him as a businessman. In fact, I wrote him years ago, and really long before he discussed running for president, and urged him to do so. This is many years ago now. And he wrote me back a very nice, cordial letter. It's just that the Trump in those books and the Trump prior to when he ran, which was very anti establishment and anti the aggression and the military force. I'd like to see
100%.
more of that. He's off to a good start with that ending of USAID. That has been an operation, CIA operation. They show when you watch mainstream media as if, oh, it's humanitarian. That's a fraction of what it does. What it does is do NGOs and anything to go against the governments of countries that the United States hasn't yet made a vassal until it becomes that. It is responsible for these coups. So that is a very good start. You also mentioned the media. What you get from there, it used to be a time when we would say the government or CIA could infiltrate it, but now it's practically, quote, run by it. You take a look at so many of the media figures in their past was
yes.
with the U.S. security services. So you cannot trust, you can go back to verify, right? What you need to do is everything, they say with a grain of salt, but anything you hear on any Western collective news, US and otherwise, UK especially, not with a grain of salt, but with a pound of salt, because they are so accustomed to lying or only giving partial truth in order to shape the narrative.
It's natural
but there's
now.
there's so many resources. You can go to foreign news, compare. Don't make a decision and repeat anything that you don't actually know. And what do we know? You cannot simply repeat. I would urge many in your audience to, if they haven't done so already, to use Telegram. That's one example where you can be in touch, reading with actual people on the ground. And in what we're discussing, the Ukraine conflict, people in those areas being shelled. You get to see the atrocities. You get to see what happened today in real time and see what the U.S. money and weapons are doing. By the way, one point. I just going to share something that I found amusing and I think powerful. In Moscow right now, there is a large park and display of all of many of the NATO, the weapons that have been captured. And it's very interesting to walk through it. They have placed the US flag, the British flag, the German flag on all of them so that people can come by and see. I think they say that they own now more javelins than Britain does that they have captured. So it's very interesting. They are on the battlefield, of course, losing. It's not a war where Russia's only using a fraction of their military force. If it were a war, it would have been over long ago. They don't want to kill more, and they do not want that destruction in Kiev, which is really always was part of Russia. So they don't want to do that to people. So it's a war of attrition. I feel that they will accomplish all their goals to make sure of that protection.
So some of the reason I started this show was because you alluded to it there a second ago, and watch the different channels, overseas. I watch I-24, CNN, I watch BBC, and several others, both conservative and liberal. And that's where if you do that religiously, so to speak, nothing. If you do that, you'll start to see right away how much there is misinformation out there. It's obvious that you've done a lot of research because you can back up, and we can have an hour conversation about the evils and wonders of the world here. And I want to go into a couple more questions, but it's a tough time to. Okay, I think the American people were at their most power in the 50s, and that's about when it started to change over to where information we became unknowing. We became fooled and coaxed into different opinions, and then they started splitting up society. I mean, this goes really, really, really deep, and I like your perspective because it's really well informed. And how did you start going? And I want to get these questions before we run out of time. But how did you get started on this path? Because you focus on Russia and the things that are around that affect, right?
Hey, well, I am a writer and author and historian. I have spent many years in the United States as a guest speaker, being invited to speak on constitutional issues. That has been my thrust for much of my life. But from a very early age, studying history, which I've always been fascinated by, I saw the empire, the imperialism of the United States that wasn't being recognized in my society. And to me, truth is my highest priority. So that which I learn, I want to share. And this came a time where I felt I needed to make myself available. I used to travel, lecture, and do that. But right now, it is so critical that Americans, my fellow Americans, learn the truth, that they have been lied to about Russia, that they are not the enemy, that I decided to make myself available to share that which I've known for years. What was another point that you had said? Anyway, you proceed. You said a lot there. Ask me a few questions. I tell your audience you can ask me anything.
Yeah, so we'll go into the next question, and I'm so glad that I'm not the only person in the world that loses his mind in the middle of a thought, forgets what I'm talking about. So yeah, I love you, man.
I have a lot to share, and you say one thing and you move to another. And I forget which one I'm going to address, but I'm very happy to answer any.
I should have warned you in the green room. That's kind of what I do. I like I bounce around from subjects sometimes because I'm just wacky, and because we can build on different subjects when bringing them together. Sometimes I just find that fascinating. So I apologize for making it. I just apologize for making it a little more tough on you. Let's go to the next question here. So you know about sanctions, right? I mean, you know the whole process back and forth. So we're going to get into a little bit of sanctions here, because that's usually what you hear about.
Yes, it's hilarious, frankly. The sanctions have been a blessing in disguise for the Russian Federation. As I had told you earlier, not only their economy, their GDP grew by 4.1%. Their unemployment is exceptionally low. I think it's like 2 point something. The United States and all the European countries do not compare to it. The sanctions actually forced, out of necessity, Russia to increase its industrialization. It forced it to become self-sufficient in areas that it had relied upon Western countries. And yes, there was a little bit of a struggle in the beginning, but they have conquered that and they overcame those difficulties, and they are stronger now as a result. And it is hilarious. What did the EU just pass its 16th wave of sanctions, and the most they can do is pick out singers and actors, and it's hilarious what they're doing. They're grabbing at straws. Meanwhile, the consumer activity, the investment in Russian, the manufacturing sector has grown. So it's actually been good, very good for Russia. It's trading more with other partners that are reliable and simply want free trade, and they are producing so much more. And yet the American people were lied to. All of the Europeans were lied to. You had the EU coming out, van der Leyen, and talking about some crazy nonsense about Russia using chips out of washing machines. I remember so many crazy, insane things that have been said by the Western nations in order to deceive their people, not only about the reasons why that they're funding Ukraine, that's a complete lie, but also the fact of the matter is Russia was always going to be the victor, will be the victor. It's just a matter how long does the United States and the European countries want people to needlessly die, which is a tragedy. They could stop it, but they don't want to give up the grip.
Absolutely. It is a travesty and a tragedy. Here's a good question here. Thank you for shedding a light on this. Okay. This is from Nick here. And he says, well, what is one policy shift that could improve the U.S.-Russia relations? I remember we used to actively work on it. Remember the whole ballet thing, and we exchanged
Right.
students, and now we're more cooperative with China, although that's kind of changing, than Russia. And what's the difference here? I driving me crazy. So what's the policy shift we should be looking at, and maybe start talking between ourselves about and pushing, because this seems like a critical.
Embrace a multipolar world, meaning give up on the idea that the United States has to be the most powerful, controlling with aggression other countries. Embrace multipolarity, which means let's do trade. Let's come together on all those benefits to our citizens, to people, together. The United States, I mean, the best that Trump could do would be to actually state, not that he's going to, but perhaps his behavior will change, whether he states it or not, that the United States no longer wants to defeat Russia and control all of its wealth of resources. That has been the U.S. goal in all of its documents. I have gone back and studied them with the Freedom of Information Act. You can see the documents that has always been the goal behind everything. But to actually state it and say, no more is that our goal. We want to cooperate and focus on making America great. Look, the presidents are going to change, but the U.S. policy needs to change and stop saying that they have to rule the world, because that's how they've been acting. They just need to focus on being a strong country, end all these bases worldwide, in this participation in NATO, which is just a tool of aggression for the United States, and focus upon cooperation. So much more could be done for the people of the United States and the world through cooperation. That would be the one policy change, instead of cloaking it. I want peace, I want this, and meanwhile covertly doing this. Meanwhile, in this part of the world, arming terrorists, because the United States has done a lot of that, would be to cease. In fact, it brings John Quincy Adams in his speech. I remember, and there's a very famous quote. It's a long speech in which he said, America, and I'm paraphrasing, should not go abroad in search of monsters to destroy. And he said to do so, to make it, and again, I'm paraphrasing, but to do so, you would become the dictatress of the world, and you would lose your own soul. And he warned against foreign entanglements. And yet the United States has decades of military actions worldwide that have nothing to do with the defense of the United States. In that, and we could have peace right now as it stands, I feel that the United States and the UK, sadly, are the main opponents of peace. They are the main threat to world peace. If all parties to a conflict actually value the truth, there's going to be peace. And to the degree that the United States, the current administration, embraces the truth, there's going to be more peace.
Yeah, and that's what we all need. And the make love not war, and that was the 70s. The love free love and all that. They had. Oh, did you want to jump on something there?
Yeah, I remember that other point that I was going to make. You were talking about in the 1950s and the shift that you felt. Even then they were nurturing this Russophobic and saying there was a threat of communism. But the Cold War was actually caused by the US and UK. Even when we go back to World War II, the goal was talking about weakening the Soviet Union. Perhaps we can attack now and take their resources. It has always been that way. But at the same time, what you are talking about was how our society became worse in entertainment, in our education systems. And that was actually a result, which we could do an entire show upon, was the infiltration of these Jewish intellectuals from the Frankfurt School in Germany. They had to flee, of course, for their protection, but they were socialist communist, and they based everything on that. And they have the goal of infiltrating the US media and the educational systems, entertainment, and they did a very good job of it in order to bring about their planks of communism. And that was where the degradation, when you see, quote, the sexual revolution as it's referred to, when you see all of the depravities that now exist in our society, that wasn't by happenstance. That was planned. But you and I might want to discuss that aspect some other time.
You are absolutely correct. I mean, we've been experimented on and controlled our entire existence. I talk about how governments have been around for like 3 millennia. The first ones thousands of years ago, and they over that time have learned how to control the masses. They used to be always called kings and so forth. Here it's the same thing. We're the peasants, and we're not acting like the system. I would think to believe that the founding fathers created the government and the documents instructing that government. What is your opinion about? Did they do the right stuff? I mean, did they get it all right, and we just over time have not voted people in, and it's getting more corrupt?
They were geniuses, but there was a big debate on how much power you give the centralized government. And
Absolutely.
I feel that in the end, huge debates before the Constitution was agreed upon. In the end, they gave too much power to a centralized government instead of to the states. And a lot of problems came from that. Nevertheless, they gave us the basis. And, I think Franklin is quoted as saying it's a republic if you can keep it. We don't even hear the word republic discussed anymore in this country.
Right.
Democracy, all this nonsense.
We're not a democracy. We're a domestic republic.
Right. But when everybody accepts all of these falsehoods, then they proceed with that. They accept things in their government that they should not. Like I said, that's the good thing that we're seeing going on is domestically in the U.S. I just hope the same clarity and focus on the truth will apply to international policies as well. Right now, I don't see that happening. The quote peace plans that are being floated, we'll say, do not at all recognize the reality. But I can tell Trump knows the reality. He's just trying to save face. Russia will help him save face. They won't remind everybody of the warmongering he had done against Russia. But he does need to embrace the truth and the reality on the ground and the liberation of people and the demilitarization of this evil fascist state, the government currently in Ukraine. And I feel one way or another, Russia will accomplish that. Hopefully sooner the better if the U.S. actually wanted that too.
Yeah, and it's what we need. You going back to a comment you made earlier, let me take the different approach to this. The facts about Russia and that all exist out there. I say facts, you know what I mean. The words. I mean, there was Russia-Gate, right? There was it's constantly this. It's constantly this battle, and you had made a comment that you hope Trump will change the narrative to be more supporting towards Russia. I'm paraphrasing what you said too, but in that vein, I don't think it's going to happen. Certainly not anytime soon, because the media, if somebody did that, the media would 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every news cycle would be pounding on that at this point. Do you agree?
Well, he is strong against the media, and he is strong against such attacks. He's proven that. He has come back resilient. He could do that if that was his goal. And that's where, sadly, I feel his goal is not motivated simply by peace. Because as I said, he could end this and stop all of the weapons and intelligence. You stop the intelligence, they couldn't even target civilians as they are now doing, even as you and I speak. So if that was actually his goal, he could accomplish it and would actually be a peacemaker. As it is, he wants the U.S. To save face, but there's nothing to save when you're in the wrong. And I think he's strong enough man to do that if human life was what was most important to him, which he sometimes says that it is. But I think his comments recently and his support of the Zionist state and all of the deaths there shows human life is not that which he values the most. It seems to be greed and the dollar, and that cannot be all important, but I feel you will have all of that if you direct your country in a righteous path. And it's possible. I think he's strong enough to do it. It would take courage, but it certainly is possible. And to the degree that he is listening to the truth, to the degree he actually had a conversation already with the president of Russia, this is good. Dialogue is always good. Then it's a matter what you do with it.
Yeah, it's and it kind of makes you think about what really goes on behind closed doors and all these things. It's intense. We got a couple more questions here, and unless more come up, but I've been very, very excited about how this conversation has gone, and so deep enough to where, hey, you got to think about this stuff, and that's what this station. Sorry, that's how this show is based, because we have to. That's all the news is. Anywhere around the world, it's either there's some special documentary, or it's for the next 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 hours. Is different people are going to say the same things time and time again.
Yes, I would like to say that it is shows like this. It's the grassroots communication between us as Americans, and each of us have our talents and our knowledge that we bring forth. And this is, where I have the knowledge, and I felt it is a necessity that I share. I see what's going on, but now that other people are learning it, or at least questioning what they thought that they knew, because that is a path when you want to grow in knowledge. I think that is what's most powerful, and that is what the United States, sadly, the government fears, is they are being exposed. And Trump is doing a very good exposing of the waste of the money. I would like to see the same exposure of their international policy exposed. Then everything would be so much better. I also wanted to make the point when you were talking about other channels. Yes, you were listening, you said, US, CNN, you said BBC and all, but they're still Collective West. I would add to that you can easily seek out online, and that's the beauty of the internet now. And I think that's what those who want such evil to continue really dislike, the fact we can communicate like this. But you can seek out. I would suggest, if people are intrigued by what I have shared, seek out some of the previous Valdai Club discussions, VALDAI, with Putin. It is a kind of intellectual communication exploration.
Can you write that in the group chat?
Chat with everyone in the studio? No,
the group chat down here.
I
you
don't
can't
have
see
that
it.
in front of me.
Okay, give me that again, because
do a search and you can find President Putin for over 4 hours every year answering questions. He lets US media come there as well. It's called the Valdai Club, VALDAI. Search for the conversations with Putin. You can go back as many years as you want, and you can see he's a genius. He knows his history. He's intelligent. You also see the compassion. Secondly, if you would like to know more about the president of Russia, seek out once a year, the annual Putin Answers Questions. Putin answers your questions. They receive thousands of questions all over the country of Russia, and he sits there, no teleprompters, no notes, and he answers.
Sounds like Trump, doesn't he?
Questions. Yes, it's good. He is open. He's accessible. But the American people should listen to him before you make any judgments, listening only to the Western side. And you will see that logic and that compassion that knowledge that we could only hope for. That is a true leader, and we could learn a lot from Russian society and from their governance. But just to give your audience a way to actually learn more themselves directly, let them evaluate. Don't let the U.S. government and media tell you what to think. Same thing with Telegram. There are numerous channels. Simply search for them. Donbass on the ground, Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson, Ukraine battleground. You will be able to read from the Ukrainian perspective, as well as the Russian perspective, as well as the civilians who are suffering the atrocities. We just now discovered more atrocities in the Kursk region, that the Ukrainians, in the basements of all of those homes, where civilians were bound and tortured and murdered, and their bodies are being found in the basements across Kursk. It's horrible, but it's more of the same. That's why I said that's why Russia began this, was to stop this kind of atrocities against people. But you don't hear that on our evening news.
No, not at all. You don't hear anything like that at all. This next question, I mean, it's so bizarre. We are being lied to day in and day out, and now we're starting to learn about it, and we've got to blow back on this because the information's out there. I know
Yes.
this topic right here could be a whole show. But real quickly, got like 2 more questions here. What role does China play in the Russian-Ukraine conflict? That's a great question. I couldn't resist it.
Oh no, it's a fine question. I would say that China, fundamentally from the start, has wanted this conflict to end, and they have repeatedly tried to influence and serve almost as a peacekeeping and promoting. South Africa has too, possible peace negotiations. In terms of with Russia, I believe that President Xi completely understands the rightness of what the Russian Federation is doing. Nevertheless, they are a government that does not want to see such wars. And that is another area, as you said, could be an entire show, because we also, as Americans, have been given a very different perspective, what they want us to think about Russia, about China. China and Russia are doing excellent economic exchanges. And of course, we have BRICS, which China is a major part of. And they really don't want to see anything that deters from the peaceful economic trade that's going on. And they know that this hurts not only, in terms of war, and they do not want war, but also economically. This isn't good for China, Russia. It's not good for the United States. It's not good for anyone. And it makes it far more dangerous. And they are a superpower, certainly. And but I believe that they have expressed, and President Xi has expressed, the rightness of what Russia is doing. But other than that, they remain neutral.
Gotcha. That brings us to our last question here, and then we'll do some closing comments and all that. I don't want to let this go. We got to do a follow-up or something, because it's so refreshing to get another look, like what Jason says here. Wow, didn't get to expect to learn this much. And I because I studied you, so to speak, and your website and some different journals you've written and so forth, I knew this was going to be not just anti-American or anti-Russian or anti-Ukraine. It's these facts say this, so we need to know the truth. And I didn't expect to learn so much. What is the biggest, you were just talking about, it was a perfect question. What is the biggest economic advantage Russia has right now?
The biggest economic advantage, aside from the sanctions, which have helped, I would say, is the the devotion to the multipolar world, and economically through BRICS. I think they are growing more powerful economically, and militarily, I will simply say, another area that certainly we have a strong military in the United States, but the United States and Europe certainly does not compare to the power of Russia. But Russia, unlike the United States and the collective West, is not showing hostility and aggression in the world. And but I would have to say that puts us all at risk, and our government needs to de-escalate. Trump is doing that through the dialogue, but I would say that their economic power is continuing to grow, and most of the world actually is joining in that for a multipolar cooperation and healthy competition, as is said, instead of trying to control, manipulate, and steal, lie, cheat, and steal. Sadly, that's what our government has been doing in countries. Same goes for Africa. They are finally having hope. Russia is bringing hope to the world for even these smaller nations to stand up and say, no, we're not going to be controlled by the US dollar any longer, because, you know, they're small, they're weak, they suffer in poverty, but that has been because of Western imperialism, European imperialism, and the world is changing. And the sooner the US says, okay, it's a different paradigm now, let's join with them instead of fight it, then I think that we are going to thrive again. So that's what I would say to that.
Yeah, that's a great response, a great collection of thought. Actually, we're getting more and more questions. There's a couple of comments here there. Before you do your closing statement, there's great show.
Let's
oh wait,
take two more.
Well,
two more.
Some of these are. I know, man. You're dynamic. I mean, it's obvious. So some of these are just questions. Great show. Loving this deep discussion. We were talking about that earlier. Loving this. So many myths being shattered right now. Again, we were talking about that. And stop. Quit. Hey, you're interrupting Christine and I here. We're having a very beneficial conversation. You guys keep sticking your nose in here and interrupting our conversation. Let me see. Great.
I just have to say this. I really appreciate that so many people are listening. Take what you learn, go and learn more with what I've provided you. You will find that it is all the facts of the matter. It's not a matter of choosing. We should always, you know, the whole idea of my country right or wrong is that it's just evil. It's, I want my country to be in the right. And anytime that it's wrong, it needs to be exposed so we can get back on the right path. And I love the fact that the audience is responding that much. I know that I would love to answer all of their questions, frankly, but perhaps at another time I kind of need to conclude. But yeah. I very much appreciate this. I will go back later and read the chat to see what was communicated, and perhaps we can put that together to address the questions that go unanswered, because share what you're learning, but I'd be very happy to scan those later, and maybe we can at another time address the questions that went unanswered. Choose two more and then I need to call it a day.
Well, no, just the rest are just comments. I was actually saying that final statement was good. The rest of them are just live show is gold. This live show is gold. So much to think about. And then can't believe how much I'm learning. Thank you so much, Christine. You're a powerful speaker. Last thoughts before I send you back to the green room and I do my at the end administration here.
Okay. Well, first of all, I thank you for the opportunity to be on Insights and Straight Talk. And I am very pleased that we have an audience, and I hope that they take it and go and learn more and share what 100%. They know, because it's up to each of us, the people that are given in our lives that we interact with, to share the truth against the lying narrative that usually people here. I would like to invite everyone to my website. Now, my website is my personal website, and it is about my faith as well as my geopolitical knowledge. So it's a combination. most people only address the geopolitical through
Right.
economic, political, and I also bring my spirituality into it. I'm an Orthodox Christian. So that is my personal website, but I would like to share it. It is AmericanOrthodoxChristian.com. And I have a number of essays up there. You can sign up, subscribe to it so that when new material appears, you will hear about it. So AmericanOrthodoxChristian.com, you can contact me through there as well. And just take what you have learned and share it and learn more. That's the power of us. And you are right, the power of the middle class. We are what runs this country. Let's not let the government decide what is done, which is evil, because most of us want what is righteous and what is good for ourselves and for the rest of the world. And I'm just glad to be able to bring some truth to this matter.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Well, we're going to have you back, and we're going to, we'll work on that. And how do we reframe the next discussion, not to recover this stuff, but expand more through it. You have a great evening, Christine. Thank you so much. Say bye to everybody.
Thank you. God bless you all. And thank you for this opportunity to share. You take care.
You bet. Bye. All right. That was, I told you guys, and Baron, I see what you're doing here. Your guest, there's obviously there's all takes on each subject, and Baron, I appreciate that, because we like to look at the facts and compare, and then like we're doing here, Baron, like you and I did a couple shows ago, be able to compare what the thoughts and processes are. And Christine was awesome, because it's not just about feeling good. We've been taught to fear Russia since I was a kid, with a lot of different warnings and things. I remember in school having to take take part of the school day out to practice, fighting against the bomb and this and that. It's just, they always have had us scared of Russia, probably so that we don't come together, communicate back and forth, and then find out how much is hurting, pulling us back as a society. With that, I'm going to sign off. This is Insights and Straight Talk with Rod Duff and producer Barbie. You see her there? Producer Barbie? Yeah? Say hi, Prue. My regular attenders coming back and back. I really appreciate it. Bradley, Jason, Nick, Russ, all great questions, and more and more and more of them. And just absolutely love the support you guys are giving. We need your support. I work every day. Hey, producer Barbie's on. Hey, producer Barbie. How's California doing? You got another Californian there right above you. Baron's on. Anyway, like I said, Insights and Straight Talk. Love you guys. As I always say, go say hi to somebody. Go create a vibe into places you're going that is better than before you got there. Be a positive influence on the frequencies of people. Wave at somebody if you don't know them. Make it a mission to say hi to somebody. I was speaking yesterday about giving somebody a compliment. I walked by them and I got this brief whiff, and I was like, "Oh, are you wearing perfume?" And she stopped and she looked at me, and she said, "Yes, I am." I said, "Wow, that smells really good." And she was good. I mean, obviously appreciative. And then I got out of there, so I didn't seem like a creep. But anyway, that's it, man. I'm chilling. I'm wrapping up. We're gonna do some post-production here. I always review these right after we put them on. I have my routine there. I'm gonna put my email address, as I always do, on the bottom of the thread, so that is it Rod Duff at me.com. So that when questions come in, I mean, we've got, I don't know, over the last 10 days, we've got 30, 40, 50 comments on the different shows. So so you guys have if there's questions that come up about Russia, Christine's going to be able to answer that, and I'm going to stumble and stagger and try and give the best average dude answer I can give you. But email us and we'll pass things on to Christine or the other guests that we have. That's why I do that. With that, I'm going to sign off here. Let me just write me.com. And stay for the closing video. And we can't wait to see you, Barbie. I'm sure you and I will be chatting here in a minute. That's part of the ritual. Christine, you were awesome. Keep it up, man. Let's make this kind of thing more of a regular. It's more regular than it was, but still not main. Well, I guess it's kind of mainstream. I'm done. I'm just going to shush. Rod Duff, Insights and Straight Talk. Also with Barbie, producer Barbie. You see her up on the screen there. Her cute little smile. So we'll have her on pretty soon because you guys keep asking for her, and she keeps ignoring me or dodging me. And have a great rest of your day, guys. Christine, you got me fired up here. I advertised the heck out of this because I thought it was going to be everything, and it was everything and more than we expected from this discussion back and forth. For now, I'm out. Love you guys, and come to our website at Rod Duff 1939 on YouTube, website rodduff.com, www.rodduff.com. For now, I'm out.